And did you bring the plane? I guess not.
No, I didn't bring the planes, but I do have a bedpan.
All right.
I have a bedpan. Yep.
And was that from Lila too, or?
That I don't think so. I think this is too old. I do have a Lila bedpan, but I just brought this one because this is so bizarre looking because it's square. I
All
think
right.
people back in the 1800s had square butts. So, we're live. Okay.
Oh, we're live. We're live. All right. Well, let's get started. This is Mac McCullough, Willard Library, bringing you another, maybe one of our best ever.
It is going to be the best.
Yeah.
This is going to be the best because we're going to be talking about Leila Hospital and the history of hospitals. Yeah.
And it's because Kurt's here. Kurt Thornton.
Yep.
My compadre, my neighbor now. How about that? I never see you there, almost never. But hey, welcome aboard, Kurt. Welcome back, I should say.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous.
So we've long had this idea, kicking around. Like I originally proposed what Kurt found in his attic. I don't know. That didn't go over so well, I guess. But or something, because this man, he just I ask him for a photo and I get 300. So.
It's my job. And Mac is so patient with me because once again, he'll say he has a program coming up, and I'll wait, of course, till the day before the program to send him the 300 pictures I have because he's going, oh, thank you so much. Because
why not?
There you go. Because what else are you doing?
Every single one of them. Someday they're all going to be on our website. So for everybody.
And once again, Mac, you do a really good job because you're balancing so many things. I'm just always amazed at how much. No, you really are. You do such a great job with this stuff because you're doing. He talks to me and I'll realize he's got like 12 things going on. I'm going, I think I'm busy with the 3 things I'm doing. And he's doing all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty amazing. So
stop. This is about you.
Okay, all right. Okay.
No, actually, we talked about what could we do, and Kurt mentioned Leila Hospital, and Leila. Obviously, it was Leila when I came here, but it wasn't the same, and that was not long before the merger of the two. And it just so happens that Leila Young, Montgomery or post Montgomery, backwards, she's being inducted to the Battle Creek Central Hall of Fame this April. So it was timely. And Kurt, he had a job. He had several jobs.
Yes, I did. Yes, I worked all around that place. Yeah.
So, when did you start, Kurt? And how old were you? And why?
1975. I was 20. I was 20 years old, and I had 2 chances. One was I had a job offering at Bob Conway was my photography teacher at KCC. And he offered me a job at a photo studio he was opening. And I had the job at Leila Hospital. I'm thinking well, which one has more of a chance of surviving? And so I went with the hospital one. I think Bob Conway ended up having 3 studios by the time he was done. And but it's always that thing where in life, if you turn one way on a corner, your whole life's going to be different than if you turn the other way. So
you never know.
And I've had really good,
because of all the mistakes we made, right?
That's right. And once again, I loved working at the hospital. I met some great people and got to know a lot of wonderful folks. So it's been a real good deal. So
cool.
But
so this is not going to be a typical history program where this is more about people, but we have to go through a little bit of history because we're still a relatively young city and we can go right back to the beginning, and that's what we're going to do. And just start by naming some of the hospitals. This one, a gift also from one of Battle Creek's finest and brightest and most influential people, E.C. Stone.
Nichols.
Sorry, that was Irving Stone.
Yeah, that was. Well, you just did that to see if I was paying attention, didn't you? That was really good. That was one of those trick questions. But
I was waiting for your audience to chime in on Facebook, but they haven't yet. So.
Right yet. But Nichols and Shepard, that was Mr. Nichols, and so he. It was funny the story you read about it because he donated the money first for a house to be rented as a hospital, and then he donated the money to purchase this building and make it into the hospital. But the big deal is his daughter was on the charitable union board, which is why he ended up giving the money, which was really a great thing. But I think she influenced him to give the money. And this house was originally Sands McCamley's home.
That's right. At
And
least that's what I've been told by you, so must be true.
it must be true because I wouldn't make that up.
But it's about where Summit Point is today, right?
Yep, and both Mac and I like the fact that the laundry is hanging on the line out in the back there. That is so funny because you're going, wow, it's just, I guess they had to wash clothes somewhere. And like, and here it is later on when they built the addition on the left that for in my young years long ago, that building was still standing up until I think I'm going to say the 1980s.
Wow.
It was an apartment building right across from the Empire. When I worked at the Empire, I could look out the window and see that building. And,
Wow.
yeah.
And then we have the Sanitarium Hospital, the original on the right.
Uh-huh. And that one burned down when the sanitarium burned. That burned down, and then they eventually used this building on the left that was originally built as a cereal factory, and it was on. Okay, I'm going to do the street wrong. Right now, it would be considered Emmett Street, but I'm trying to think what the name of the street was prior to that. But because before they had Emmett Street run all the way through Irving Park, it had a different name up there.
So would that have been on Washington?
Nope. That would have been the side street. It's Emmett Street now.
Right.
But nope.
Anyway, it's where Grace is now.
Yes, it is. It's where Grace Health is. Exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then the Mother's Maternity Hospital on Beecham Street.
Yeah. Mac and I were talking to each other about it. He said the Historical Society has records from that hospital. I always tried to figure out where it was. Mom never mentioned it, and Mom was always my source of stuff that would have been there in the 20s and 30s. But yeah, this was the Mother's Maternity Hospital. And this was the Elm Street Hospital, the osteopathic hospital in Battle Creek. It's still there. It's a house now, an apartment building. And lots of people write it up whenever I post something on Facebook and talk about how they were born there. And it's amazing that it's still there. But then they moved out to 20th Street in the late 50s. Mac, do you have
do we have that down? Yeah, it's not. I don't remember, and it's not on my notes. But
okay, well, it was in the late 50s. See, I'll just see once again, like
history. History.
If we say it's history, so yeah, there we go. Yeah,
And that was the precursor to the Lakeview Hospital, of course.
The earlier one was, yes, the Elm Street Hospital was.
And then this is the Maple Street Hospital.
Yep. When I was young, this was the YMCA. This is where the Y Center is now, but this was eventually turned over to the Young Men's Christian Association, and it was the YMCA for quite a few years.
Yeah, I think I have a photo of that as well.
So the Kimball House should be right next door there, off to the left, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this was the Contagious Hospital. This was on North Fremont Street, about where the Davidson building is at KCC now. It was, and Chris, at the time this was built, and even when Leila Hospital was built, it was on the very north end of town. You know, if you went any further north, you were in the country. There were farms, and so this was way on the north side of town, and it was way back at the end, like I said, of Fremont Street. It was sort of a spooky place. I remember when I was a kid, we'd drive past it, and it was all boarded up, and it looked like one of those horror film places you'd go to meet Freddy or something like that. It's like, it was scary looking. Yeah.
And then the American Legion Hospital, that building went down not too long ago.
Yeah, because I think it was called the Roosevelt Roosevelt Center or something, and then because it was built right after World War One, and then I said it was just turned on recently. I was telling Mac it had these cool, huge chandeliers inside in the main lobby area. We tried to get them when they were tearing the building down, but I couldn't get anyone to. I couldn't sucker anyone into going out and getting these 8-foot tall chandeliers. I mean, people just don't want to really go after history. So
that's no dedication.
No.
So and that leads us to the Kimball.
That was good.
The
Kimball Hospital, where the Calhoun County Medical Care Facility is now.
Yeah.
Once again, even by the time I would go there and sing with choirs, we would go out there and sing at Christmas time for the patients. And that was a spooky looking place too. It has that castle look to it. It was dark red. And by the time we went there, all the trees were growing up, and it was back in the woods. But The Calhoun County Medical Care Facility is really a beautiful place now. So yeah.
And of course, this hospital was named for Arthur S. Kimball,
Mm-hmm.
who was the second generation Kimball here in town, for whom the Kimball House Museum is named.
Mm-hmm.
And he was quite a leader in the treatment of tuberculosis, which killed both him and his father, and maybe his son. I'm not sure.
Okay. And didn't Dr. Kellogg, was he involved in this also? I thought Dr. Kellogg.
Yes, yeah. Well, they were both very big proponents of the open air schools, which
Yes.
I'm a photo, but those are cool photos.
Yeah.
The idea that kids would go to school in open air and they would wear
Mhm.
these big wool suits.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. It's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
it wasn't just in Battle Creek; it was all over the country. And then we get to 1925, and Lila Young, post Montgomery, provides the gift for Kimball Hospital, or I'm sorry, Leila Hospital. We'll shorten that.
Because it was funny because it was originally called Lila White Post Montgomery Hospital,
Yeah.
and she even said she said just call it Lila.
So yeah, and they chose that location, and that's where it remains today.
Mm-hmm.
And she was quite the benefactor for Battle Creek.
Yep, she was. Yep, she gave so much to the city. The Emily Andrus home, which I believe was named after her mother, isn't that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Yep. On Capitol Avenue, it was just set up for I'm going to say elderly women that was to go and live towards the end of their life. It was really a really nice place. Once again, I went with choirs and sang there too. We went to all the hot spots to sing Christmas carols, but it was a beautiful, and it still is a beautiful house as far as I know.
And then she also purchased the old country club site and gave that to the city for the development of a park.
Yeah,
Also a place for Kingman Museum, and they had big plans. Then the depression hit, and not all of those panned out. But
yeah, because the hill
it has today. I mean, because the original plans called for a amphitheater, and now they have one. So
yep. Because they were going to build a symphony hall out there. They were going to build all kinds of cultural structures up on the hill where by Kingman, and it was going to be just a cool place. Once you see, when I was young, Lila Arboretum was a scary place to go. You didn't go there very often because it was a seedy place, and now it's beautiful. They have done just an incredible job
they really have.
making the park a beautiful place, and it's great. It's too bad Kingman Museum is not open right now, but hopefully something can be done with their collection.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wanted to just read a couple of things. I mean, I had a long quote from our statement from Mrs. Montgomery. Just how much she wanted this to be the best hospital that it could be anywhere for its size, and wanted to get it to continue to grow. But I love this, this description of Edwin Nichols, who was at the place where this was announced, and he made some remarks. These aren't direct quotes, but it was accounted by the reporter that his words impressed all present as one of the most graceful and thrilling to which they had ever listened. But I thought this, he'd long thought that Battle Creek might and should be guaranteed for all times as the best place to live in, not only in Michigan, but in all the world, and that the materializing of the project proposed would go farther toward the realization of his hopes than anything else he could conceive. And I love reading this stuff because there was just so much pride and common cause in building this little city, in the middle of southern Michigan into like this, world power, and this model city. And in many ways, they succeeded.
Yes, they did. Yep.
A lot of really cool things happen here. But so we'll go right on into the. And I wanted to put up a nice color photo. And you talk a lot about in your history presentation, which you gave at the Historical Society at some point, about the grounds and the shield there. I mean, they were just gorgeous, and I didn't put up a lot of photos because we don't have a lot of time. But
I always forget the fact that Clifton Shepard, the guy who designed Irving Park, also designed the grounds for Leila Hospital because they were right next to each other, and they wanted them to merge together seamlessly, so it was supposedly a healthful place for people to recuperate. And when I was young, that shield on the right, every year the gardener would have a different floral display there, and we have a few pictures of them. But it was just amazing the stuff they would do to the grounds. And a lot of the pictures I have, you go and see all around the hospital. It was just beautiful what they would do. But I know I was reading about when she gave the site that was really hilly over there, and they had to level the ground, so they used hydraulic means of bringing the hill down, which meant they sprayed water on it and made all the dirt run down to where Irving Park was, where the swamp was, and filled in the swamp.
Yeah.
But yeah, the hospital cost her $600,000, and they think about that at the time. And I still want to go with her little quote that when they dedicated the hospital, she said she wanted to make the Leila Hospital a model. Let nothing in the world be left undone to see that every patient in the hospital gets the most perfect possible care. And over the years I was there, that would they would have that posted on walls and in different plaques and places to try to give you a sense of the pride that you should have in where you were working. And Mac, like I said, I like this picture. This is we're not sure what year it is, but those are all families who were born at Leila Hospital, and they had a big party for them to all come up there and get together. And we're not sure who the person with the X is on there. I'm assuming it's whoever owned this picture. Yeah. But yeah, that was really cool. And that entrance was really spectacular too. You went in there and the staircase was beautiful. And if you go to the hospital now, they have the statue of Jesus in the emergency room lobby. And he used to stand in that entryway. And of course, we all called him Touchdown Jesus because his hand's up in the air. And it's like, and I can we'll tell the story later on of the times I used to put him on the elevator and push all the buttons, and Jesus would go visit all the floors. But
you were such a troublemaker.
I was. I'm surprised they didn't get rid of me much earlier than they did. But so this is me at when I started at the hospital. And so the hat I've got on now is the hat we had to wear when I worked in dietary, because guys had to wear hats, girls had to wear hair nets. And so yeah, this is me with my supervisor, Patty Graw, who, as I was telling Mac, the great thing about working there is there were so many people that I made connections with and friendship with that I still am friends with. And Patty Graw is one of those people. She was a wonderful supervisor, just so patient. And because, as you heard, I would sometimes put Jesus on the elevator, and she had to deal with that all the time, and she was so pleasant and so good with us all. It's just and part of that was her belief that making the employees get along better and happier made us give better care to the patients. So we did. We really did have a feeling that we were trying to do our best to make sure patients got healthy and were treated really well. And as I told Mac, that sticker on my nose is says salami, because we used to have to put that on sandwiches, and being that me, I had to put that on my nose. This is where I began my career at Leila Hospital. This is the tray line in the cafeteria where we would prepare meals for all the patients in the hospital. And it was exciting because you'd start out at the serving the liquid, the coffee or tea, and that was the easiest job. And as you moved up the scale of your skills, you would get to serve the main dishes, which would be you'd have to have like a chicken. Then you had to have a chicken without skin on it. Then you had to have chicken that wasn't prepared with any salt. And then you had to have chicken that was ground. Then you had to have chicken that was strained. And you'd have to put that on the tray as the food went by. And it was a race sometimes, but see how many trays you could get on the line at once. And we had a good time. It was
how was the food?
Excellent. Yeah. Even though now I'm really surprised when I go up there, the food is really good.
Yeah.
But when I go eat there when I visit someone, the food they really do a really nice job.
Yeah.
And the picture on the left is 1976, the bicentennial, when the 7-Up company had 50 cans with each state on them. And if you stack them all together, it made Uncle Sam, which is in the background of the picture there for us. And I was telling Mac, this was one of the first times I got in trouble with the marketing department at the hospital, because I set that all up. We used cans that still had 7-Up in them. So after we were done, we took them all down and put them back into the supply to be used. And I wrote that in an article that the Enquirer printed. And apparently that was giving a bad light to the hospital when I said I had to take them down. I'm still never really sure what that was all about. But once again, that was part of my career and sort of pissing off the administration of the hospital. I just like, it was what I did. So, but once again, we had a great time. And on the right, that was when I started and went from dietary to becoming a unit clerk. I worked on the 4th floor, and those are the ladies I worked with on the 4th floor, the nurses. It has one of my little signs in front of it for the 4th of July, because I would draw little pictures. As I was telling Mac, it was so interesting to start working up there because I was young and stupid, and I didn't think much about it. But here I'd be working with these people, and those ladies would literally be going down the hallway and saving someone's life. They would be in the room. They'd be doing CPR. They'd be doing the whole works, and I'd be getting a call from their husband who would be complaining about the fact that they were going to get green beans that night and they wanted corn. And you're going, I can't get your wife on the phone right now. She's coding a patient, but I'll leave her the message as soon as she gets off the phone. And it was one of my realizations of, I don't know, sexism, the word? I don't know. It's like they
had gender roles that were more clearly defined in those days, and it was harder for women to break away from that, of course.
Yeah.
Because
and nothing against their husbands at all. I mean, they may have been a mechanic at, which is fine once again because I want my car repaired, but they would be treating their wives so differently that I saw them, because they were smart and they had to know what they were doing, and they were really skilled, and they were compassionate. They loved their work. It was just it was an amazing experience for me working with them. Yeah. And this is when I was working at the hospital when they had the big blizzard in '78. And it was so funny because one of my friends worked at the hospital. I lived over on East Avenue at the time, and we decided to walk into work because the snow was so bad you couldn't drive. So we met each other, walked into work through the snow drifts. When you got to the hospital, every sidewalk was cleared. All the driveways were cleared, because that was when they had a maintenance staff that was 24 hours. So they've been working all night keeping everything clear. So the hospital was perfectly well to park in and get around in. But then, of course, nobody could get out anywhere because the snow was so bad. So many of the nurses were stuck there for 3 or 4 days. They could not leave. They had to wear the same clothes for day after day after day. They did have scrubs in the hospital, but once again, they didn't have enough to make sure everyone got clothed. I know we had to deal with, there was a foul posh up the street on North Avenue, and they called us in the morning and said, we're holding all of the bread for you because we know you've got to feed these people that are in the hospital. They can't leave. There's patients that cannot leave, and we need to, we want to make sure you have supplies. So once again, that was very cool that the community worked together. I said I worked that day. I once again was a unit clerk, but because there were no doctors coming into the hospital to see anyone, there was nothing for me actually to do on the floors. So I came and worked in the kitchen because I'd been there for so many years and helped out there. But like I said, Dr. Lancaster skied in because he could ski in. So he skied into the hospital. He was all the doctors allowed him to treat all of their patients because he could get there. He would order tests. He would keep things going. Of course, the other thing was he discharged a lot of patients, but they couldn't go anywhere because nobody could get out of the building. We had to keep them in the building. They set up cots for us in the physical therapy department so people could stay overnight. Some of the nurses got in trouble because there were empty beds up on the patient floors, and so they would just go in whenever they could and crash because they wanted to sleep. They got in trouble for that because you weren't supposed to be using hospital beds to sleep in. But
that's Pat there too, right?
That's Patty Graw holding up the shirt right there. But yeah, it was an amazing experience because once again, the community worked together. They had People with snowmobiles brought nursing staff in. They would go get nurses at home and bring them into work. They would take patients. I know there was a lady who was over by Homer trying to get to the hospital, and she delivered her child en route. And it's just, it was an amazing time. But we all worked together. Everyone worked together and took care of the patients. It was a great time to get together. And I was telling Mac, I love this picture because Sister Charlene, who's in the back row wearing black, she was the administrator of the hospital, and she gave me this picture. But the thing I think is so cool is these women are all administrators of Sisters of Mercy hospitals. And in this picture, they're all getting together to form the Sisters of Mercy Healthcare Corporation, which at the time they did this, it was the second or third largest healthcare corporation in the United States. But the thing I think is funny is over the years, I'd hear male administrators come in and talk about those old ladies that ran the place and how they were so out of touch and how they really didn't know about modern care and modern administration. But these nuns and administrators are creating a thing for the future of healthcare. They were thinking ahead to try to make sure the hospital could financially survive and could thrive. And it's just, like I said, to me, it's an amazing picture that when I think about how people look at these little old ladies who were the administrators. And people will ask me about Sister Charlene. I think the next picture shows her that she's doing one of the wellness runs, and she would be on that. And people ask me about Sister Charlene, and they go, "Well, you must have really liked her," because I said, "Well, no, she scared the hell out of me. She was the classic nun. She would come down the hallway. I'd be working at the desk in progressive care, and she would come up to the desk and go, that light bulb is burned out, and I want it fixed." And it wasn't like please or anything. She'd walk off, and she could come back the next day, and if the light bulb had not been fixed, she would come up to me and go, "Why didn't you get that fixed?" And I could have an answer like, "The maintenance department's been informed, they're getting a light bulb, it'll be in today," or something. But she was so sharp and attuned to everything going on in the facility. And I realized she lived there, which makes it an easier job for her to see what's going on. But she would make rounds twice a day, and she made sure everything was being done correctly. A patient would come out, I'd be talking to her and say, "My food was cold." She would come over to the desk and say, "Give me the head of food service on the phone." And he would have to come up and talk to this patient and apologize for the cold food. And he would give the patient his phone number, his extension. So if this happens again, call. But I mean, she was on top of this stuff. And like I said, she was tough and she was scary, but she ran a tight ship, and you knew that. So you knew you were supposed to give the best care possible because the administrator actually was aware of everything going on. And the other picture here with a balloon, Sister Charlene we had a patient, a young child who had cancer and wasn't doing well, and had talked about wanting to go on a balloon ride because it was 1981, our first balloon championship in Battle Creek. So the hospital contacted whoever has this Cal gas balloon, and they came up to the hospital, set it out on the helipad we had there, and the patient went out and got into the balloon, and they took the patient for a ride. And it was a short ride because they couldn't be far from the hospital for very long. But I mean, those were those kind of things that they did that was above and beyond what most administrators do now. And I'm not knocking the administrators now because there's so many more things going on than there were in 1981. But they were so sharp and cared about what was going on. So it was it said you knew what you were expected. I know I talked to some of the administrators later on at the hospital when we were paying to have programs come in to make us happy. We called them happy programs, which were trying to teach us how to be friendly and kind to people. And you're going, I said, why don't you save the money and have the administrator make rounds once a week to know everybody, and we would feel better about our job, and we'd know the administrator. We would know who they were. And they said, well, no, we have these programs coming in that we're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for, and they're guaranteed to make the employees happy. And you're going, you guys just don't get it. But
Well, before you go to this next, I just want to say that I want to be careful about what I say too, because I've encountered some wonderful
Mhm.
people at Bronson and
Oh yeah.
at BCHS
Hmm.
and other places. But there is something different today in the sense that it really was a community, and people were connected, and you felt part of the community, and there was a personal touch that today's corporate structure, the way things are set up, and plus all the regulation and
Hmm.
all the insurance and the extraordinary costs. I mean, it's just different, and you feel like that's not quite the same. You know,
Like I said, when I started at the hospital, I felt that we were a service to the community was what we were there for. We were there to serve the community's health and be there for that. And later on, healthcare has become money. And I wanted to be paid. I mean, let's be real. The
we
employees
all
needed to
do.
be. We wanted to be paid. We
Yeah.
needed to get money. We had to make sure it ran efficiently. I'm all behind that and stuff. I think that's. But I still think there needs to be a merger of both ways because they have to. Once again, they have to follow rules. There have to be financial things they do. They have to make sure that things are being covered. Because when I started in the hospital, there would be people that would come into the hospital for a physical that would run for 3 days, and they would be a guest in the hospital while we ran tests on them for 3 days, and that's all it was. They would have those were the people that would get lobster. We had lobster. We would serve people on Sundays. They would give them wine. They had for their meals and stuff, but they were there for just tests.
Yeah.
But insurance companies paid for that back then, and they shouldn't. I mean, that was sort of abuse of the system because they did. You're looking at that going, really? You're keeping someone in the hospital for 3 or 4 days just to run tests, and the hospital liked it because once again they got money, and that was when Leila was a 228 bed hospital. Community, I think, was 206, and then there was the sanitarium hospital. I think was like 50 some beds, and you're looking at that number now. I think the hospital has, if it has 80 beds now at Bronson Battle Creek, because we've changed how healthcare is given,
Yeah.
provided now, and that's not bad. That's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just how healthcare has changed so much. This picture is of
Great example of what you're
the
talking
lady.
about.
The lady sitting next to me, it was Jean Brown. She was the charge nurse in progressive care, and what was amazing, the 4 or 5 years before this, she had won the lottery. She'd won $1.5 million in the lottery, and people said, "Well, you're going to retire now," and she's going, "No." She wasn't a nurse for the money. She was a nurse because she loved the job. She loved caring for people and helping people get better. And so she stayed for years after she won the lottery and was the kindest, nicest lady you'd ever want to meet. But these folks here are the nurses, and even we were a team. There's our housekeepers in the picture there because we were all together, a team of people that cared for folks up in critical care. And so back then, the housekeeper was assigned to our unit. That was her. She stayed there. And there was a certain pride in her rooms being cleaned better than the nurses or the area on the 5th floor, where they had their housekeeping people that would clean the rooms too. So there was a pride in making sure your area was the best. And now, because of efficiency, the housekeeping people move wherever they can, wherever they're needed, which makes sense. But it's a better way of moving
More
around.
efficient.
Yeah, it's more efficient. But once again, you've lost some of that pride that people had in just their jobs. But yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that that couldn't happen today. I've often said if I won $1 million, I'd keep working because I love working.
Yep.
But to have that kind of dedication and love for what you do when you don't need the money,
Yep.
that says a
Oh,
lot.
like I said, that was what was great. You're just looking at this person going like, wow, what a great thing. These are the kind of people you want taking care of you, people that actually love their job and care about it. And there's people now that feel the same way. I mean, in the hospitals now, those people up there that are working still care that way, but it is a different. This
I
was
had no idea that Ronald Reagan was a patient there.
well, see, we did bring him in every now and then. See, this when I was working in progressive care, and on holidays, I would bring my Ronald Reagan mask in, and a suit, and I'd stuff him the suit with blankets, and we would take him, and every hour we'd roll him up and down the hallway, and I had a tape deck in his lap that played the Stars and Stripes Forever, and you'd roll him into patient rooms, and people on ventilators and stuff would just smile, and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't changing people's health care, but the nurses would laugh. The patients would feel better. And I was telling Mac, you couldn't do this anymore. This would be totally out of character what you do in a hospital. And maybe that's good. Maybe it isn't, but it was a different time. Yeah, it was but once again, when you have the president visiting, you had to be like pretty sharp on that. So, And also, it wasn't always work. We had each year we'd have an awards banquet. So everybody who'd worked at the hospital for 5 years or more would be invited to this banquet. And this was out at the MEA Conference Center. As the three ladies here are from medical records, and they dressed up as the Andrews sisters. And we would have an entertainment contest where you'd have like 10 or 12 employees from the hospital get up and do songs or magic tricks. And these were the Andrews sisters. And it was just part of our, once again, being a family. And not everyone was close, but you did feel like a family. You knew everybody. You do these kind of events together, so you had a connection. The person on the right, Mac found this picture. This is from the Leila Follies, because they did them for I think 23 years. They did the Leila Follies, and they would be held at WK Auditorium, and it would be a variety show. Sometimes the acts were really bad. Sometimes they were really bad. They were good. They were so bad. But it would, and some of them were really good. That made it sound like they were all bad, but some of them were really good. And this is
practice in there.
Yeah, they'd bring a director in from New York, which I thought was really impressive, and he would come in and try to get us to put on this show. They would have a format, and then you'd stick the acts that we had here in Battle Creek into it, and they would have commercials. Different businesses would pay to have a commercial joke done while they were doing the Follies. But it was a great fundraiser. And this was at the Leila Lodge, which was next door to the hospital. It used to be a nursing school. And it was an incredible building. That was one of those crazy stories where I tried to get the administrator of Battle Creek Health System to keep the lodge standing because it wasn't in the way of the new building. I said, it's really a cool building. You can make it into an office administration building. It would be, no one would have a building like this. The front lobby is just a beautiful room. And he's like going, but it's old. Going, oh, okay. And so they knocked that down too. But to make way for a better healthcare system. And this I told Mac, this was John Craig. He worked in respiratory care. He was a really amazing fellow. He had done so many things in the community, and he would come in with the patients and tell them a story about things he had done in his life. He used to be the person who would go to Detroit and bring motion pictures back to the Bijou and the Michigan and the different theaters. And one time he was in Detroit picking up film at the Warner Brothers studio. And he goes, there was no one there, and he was waiting. And finally, there's some guy in the back, some old guy, and he calls him up and said, "Can you help me?" And the guy comes up, and it's Jack Warner, that was the president of the Warner Brothers company. He happened to be in Detroit visiting, and he talked to John, and he ended up getting a note he wrote John a note on the back of his sales receipt. So when John went out to California, he took it to the studios and handed it to the guy at the gate. And the guy goes, "Well, you can't come in." He goes, "Well, I have this note." And he goes, the guy takes it back. A few minutes later, someone comes out with a little golf cart and takes him around the studio on a private tour because Mr. Warner was in London filming My Fair Lady. So he was, and John was the first broadcaster in Battle Creek to do a live TV broadcast. He tells stories about that. And then in the years he was in respiratory care, I would hear him in rooms with patients. And he was so good with people because he'd have to do blood gases back then where you have to draw blood. And from what I understand, you had to draw really deep. And it was really painful, but he was so excellent with patients and so good. It was just a pleasure to work with someone like that, who once again really cared about the patients. It was just great to have him there. So,
Yeah.
and I told Mac he needs to interview John because John is still around and has great stories about the early, like broadcast in Battle Creek, as he was part of it. So, anyway,
Wow.
yeah.
I'll have to look him up. He's still in town?
Yes, he is. Yep. Yes, he is. And once again, he it just shows you the people that came together. Other than like me, who was just an incredibly clever person that came to work at the hospital, it was people like John and people like Sister Charlene that would come to Battle Creek to make this place a really amazing, amazing place. So yeah,
I don't know if you've been seeing the comments, Kurt. Christine has, and that what you're talking about, arterial blood gases.
Yep. Oh yeah, those. Yeah, yeah. Anyhow.
And let's see, and and we're winding down to the end. This was, well, you tell about what was going on there.
Well, as Battle Creek Health System was forming, they were looking at Leila and Community, which it was that crazy thing: two hospitals competing with each other, 2 blocks across from each other. Didn't make a lot of sense. The competition, it was crazy to be competing with someone so close. So they came up with merging because healthcare was. They realized it was going to be an issue with money. We had to be efficient. We had to really batten down and try to make us run really good. So they merged with Community and became Battle Creek Health System. And they were trying to figure out which hospital to use or to build a brand new hospital somewhere else. And they decided to use the Leila site to build a new hospital. So they had to tear it down. So the last day we were in the hospital, critical care was the last unit to close because they wanted to make sure that was operating in case something happened to anyone else in the hospital. You had to have critical care open. So we were the last ones to leave, and they the nurses went through and wrote on the walls and wrote messages, wrote memories of people who were patients there. This is one of them. And it was just once it was emotional because we really cared about where we worked and the people who had come through there and we'd taken care of. So it was really an emotional thing.
Yeah.
The humorous part of it about it was there was a security guard that went up and wrote down everyone's name and he was writing them all up because we had been writing on the hospital walls and you shouldn't be doing that. They're tearing the place down next week. It's like you're going like. So, and this one, Karen, one of the ladies I worked with, I told Mac I wanted to read what she wrote there because it was really emotional for all of us. So, is this my point where I can read what she?
Can you tell me a little bit more about what she did and who she was?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. She was a nurse in critical care. She was an RN, and she had been there for quite a few years with us, and cared for so many people. And once again, it was. You hear this all the time, and I'm sure people shake their heads. We were like a family. We did know what was going on with everyone. You were involved with their lives, with their kids, with what was going on. And so we were really a close group. And as the hospital was closing down, some of us were not real keen on the merging with another hospital because everyone has it's that classic Battle Creek thing. We have our little tower and we're happy in it and we don't want to merge with anyone else. I don't understand why we're that way here in Battle Creek, but we do seem to have that mentality of us and them as opposed to working together. But once again, Battle Creek Health System formed and it did become a excellent place for healthcare. But anyhow, Karen, we were writing on the walls there. We all got to write messages about people who'd been in the rooms. And Karen wrote this. Let's see. What's in a name? More than just words when it comes to the name Leila. Leila is not just a building. Leila stands for a way of life and a philosophy of care that has been unparalleled. Innovative, competent, and tender care was the standard. It was provided not only by the medical, nursing, and ancillary staff, but also in the spiritual support of the nuns and priests who walked the halls and touched the lives of those of all faiths. So many memories are contained within these walls and within our hearts. Happy memories of the patients and families we have known and the camaraderie of our co-workers and doctors. We cannot forget the sad thoughts of those whose lives that we have been lost. For those of you who can't understand our sadness and anguish in leaving this behind, may not have ever experienced the pride and bonding that takes place when you work in a place of respect and caring. It is a great loss to us. So, in remembrance, here is to what it was. And I said that was part of the, once again, the mentality of business people coming in and running the hospital, as opposed to people who um, their job is their life's work, not just a job. It was
Yeah.
their life. And once again, it was a great place to work. Community was a great place because when we merged, I got to know the people at Community, and they did a great job. As I was telling Mac, or showing him some of the stuff I have, they had a going away party at Leila Hospital when they were getting ready to tear it down, and the people in marketing and the administration thought there might be 30 or 40 people that were going to show up. And I was telling them, I think there's going to be more people, but we had 400 or 500 people show up at this open house they had, because people, the hospital had touched so many people's lives, whether they were there and got cured, whether their loved one went there and passed away, uh, whatever the case was, people had connections with the hospital and came to see it before it was brought down. Now, once again, the lesson that they didn't learn is when we left, because we left Lila, went over to Community while they were redoing the Lila site, and then we left Community and came back to the Lila site for Battle Creek Health System. But they didn't do a going away party for Community Hospital. So the gentleman who was the head of pastoral care and we went together and bought food and made displays and stuff and headed up for the final day at Community, because I think the hospital administration kept thinking it was going to be a bad thing if people were seeing the hospital being torn down, that they had memories and connections, and they didn't want people to be angry that the hospitals were being demolished. They're going, well, no, we all want the healthcare to be better. So we see that happening, but you should use this as a positive thing, not a negative thing. Have them come see Leila Hospital before it's torn down, and Community Hospital, and say, wait till you see what we're going to do at the new place, and see how we're going to make this great place. And once again, the marketing and hospital administration no, they didn't think that was a real good idea. But they've once again, I know it's shocking, but I'm not always right. I know it's crazy, but I'm not always right. So, but
It's
they,
okay to yearn for I'm old enough too that I can be a little bit of curmudgeon, and
mhm.
back in the day,
Oh yeah.
I think that there are some things that are false about that, but I think
Mhm.
there are some things that are true about that.
Mhm.
The idea of a workplace being something that you look forward to being a part of and love
Mhm.
being a part of, that
Because
feels like it's less common than it used to be.
yes, because talking to Sister Charlene, like I said, who scared the hell out of me, but in later life, I would get to know her as time went by, and she would tell me that when they were planning the new Lila Hospital, she said, I'd spend sleepless hours going over the blueprints because she was a nurse. So she said, I would look at the floor plans and say, is that sink going to be near enough for the nurse to wash her hands easily? And so she would move things around and be planning this stuff, and really working to make this. And I don't think the administrators later on, they looked at the hospital and go, it's pretty. So that was what they were happy about. And you're going like, well, and that's not a bad thing, because you would hire an architect that
Yeah.
designed hospitals. So I mean, but it's still the devotion that she had to it. And the interesting thing is she put a time capsule in the 1969 building. And when they remodeled part of the front of the Lila Hospital building, when it became Battle Creek Health System, they removed the cornerstone, and they had her come back, and they opened it and had her read the letter that she wrote to whoever was going to open up the time capsule. And that was cool, because that would have been like 30 years before that she had done that. And I don't think when she wrote the letter, she was planning on it being her that was going to open up the time capsule, read it. But that was, once again, it was really nice they did that. They let her come back. And it meant an awful lot to her to be able to come do that, because she really cared about the place.
Yeah. I have a theory, Kurt, and that is that, when a community builds things like these, Obviously this happened through the generosity of Lila
Mhm.
Young,
Mhm.
post Montgomery.
Nicely done.
Lila Young, a Battle Creek native,
Yep.
um, and but it was also a reflection of the community's not only its view of itself, but its aspirations for its future.
Mhm.
They very much did it together.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that those things can be rebuilt even in this complicated world. And that's why history, I think, has a lot to tell us.
Mhm.
It's not just about facts and figures; it's about how people lived. And
Mhm.
so
Yep, I
I'm really
agree with
happy
you
with
totally.
that, Kurt, because you tap into that a lot, I think. And
Like I said, it's always the same deal. We need to work together to do things for our community. It's we need to get down to realizing there's things we need to do and make it happen together for the betterment of all of us. It's like, and not all of us are going to get what we want, but I mean, but together we should move forward. And and like I said, even when we were Lila Community, Battle Creek Sanitarium, and Lakeview General, we would have things happen where we'd need a ventilator, and for a patient, community would have a ventilator and let us take it. It wasn't like any big, it wasn't a huge deal. It was like, yeah, you will bring the event, and same way with Lakeview General, we would share things because we were all working together. And yeah, you wanted your facility to be the best and stuff, but still, you realized you were all working together to make the health for the community. But yeah, so
well, thank you, Nan. I'm glad you tuned in, and thank you, Kurt. I did want to say that Lila's gifts. I'll just call her Lila. We're not necessarily first name basis, but her gifts to the city, total about $1 million. But if you adjusted all that for inflation, you're well over $20 million,
oh my god, yeah, no, yeah.
and and, uh, and really left a mark. And we're still, enjoying, Lila Arboretum, of course, um, and Emily Andrus House,
Mhm.
and so
Even Bronson Battle Creek still is there because of her
right,
their thoughtfulness and their thinking ahead for the future. Yeah, because
yeah,
people go, they were just doing it to get their name on something. I'm going, maybe that was part of it, but like I said, Lila's mother had been a patient in Sister of Mercy Hospital, I think in Ann Arbor, I
yeah.
think, and she'd seen the care there, and that's why she had the Sisters of Mercy operate her hospital. She'd seen what a good job. I mean, she really was interested in it. I mean, it wasn't just a passing fancy. She really,
Well,
and,
she continued to give to the hospial over the years for its expansions, and um, so it wasn't just a one-time thing. So,
and I think and we want to probably cut this off, but it was also interesting that she had a suite of rooms at the hospital, which I just thought it was weird. She didn't have a suite of rooms at the Post Tavern, but I guess they were renting rooms, so they wanted to make money there. But she had a suite of rooms at Lila Hospital that were always there for her. If she and her husband were in Battle Creek, they stayed at the hospital.
yeah.
And we had the furniture from there on display at the 60th anniversary of the hospital. A bunch of it is disappeared, but anyhow, they had a really nice display of her stuff and the things she had in her room at the hospital. It was good. She was involved in it. She really did come back and see it, and that
Yeah,
was pretty cool.
yeah. Kurt, thank you so much for coming on.
Mac, thank you, because you always make this so easy. You know, well, no, because sometimes I have to be guided. So you quite often help me with that and try to keep me on track. So thank you for all the stuff you do, and for the 46 projects you're doing right now. Yeah, come on, it's like
Now we'll be talking about more of those, but I'd like to make this a sporadic thing where you come on every now and then, because you got and I'm sure everybody here is on Facebook. At least the people are making comments, so
and
they see your posts all the time.
I was showing Mac. I wanted to make sure I brought some of my artifact. This is a
Yeah,
bedpan from the. There we go. So you want to show some of the classic things we have here. You said things in my attic, so there I have a bedpan. And the thing is the older I get, the more handy it is to have this right here next to my desk, because you never know. I might have used it during this conversation. You didn't even know it.
Yeah. See, well, we never know what's going on, from the frame down.
There we go.
All right, that's enough of that. We gotta get off. Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. It was great. Good numbers on the audience, and
Cool.
yeah, you'll be hearing from us soon. And Kurt will be back, and look forward to it.
Cool. Thank you,
Have
Mac.
a good night.